Desolation. Barren stretches of land. Bizarre plants. Landscapes that seem from out of this world. This is a geography shaped by desert and water. It is usually the presence of deserts and absence of water that define living conditions here. Contrary to popular belief, there are many who have adapted to the tough conditions here. Surprising forms of life appear in the most unexpected of places. There is water, and then there is not. The springs here are dry for most of the year. Surprisingly, the most stable source of water is fog. Even a single drop is critical for the creatures in this geography. This is the story of the wild Namibia, home to some of the rarest forms of life. Etosha is home to surprisingly large herds despite poor rainfall, which lasts only for a very short period annually. Conditions here are challenging. However, the desert is the only other alternative. Life in Etosha is relatively easier compared to the desert. However, the struggle to survive never ends. Etosha, the dusty, great white expanse brought to life by waterholes. Arid and dusty plains are inhabited by many species. Although limited, herbivores can find food even during the dry season. Large grassland, short thorny plants, and acacia trees will help keep the herds alive. However, the little food available is scattered over a very large area. Herds have to be on the move constantly. In Etosha, zebras live on the borders. They cannot survive the desert. Instead, they have to roam these lands to find food and settle with scarce resources. Until the rainy season arrives and the grass is green briefly, zebras will have to find ways of staying alive. The African sun is scorching. Then there are irritating insects and parasites. Dust bathing looks like the best solution until they reach water. The oryx is probably Namibia's most adept animal to drought. Evolved to live in the most desolate parts of the desert, Etosha is a haven for these creatures, even during the dry season. They know they will eventually come across a waterhole. This place is not as unforgiving as the desert. There is some food and a little shade. The animals are covered in dust. This seemingly endless hike that has taken days over barren expanses must end soon. They are thirsty and exhausted. It is not just the scorching sun, hunger, and thirst. Zebras and antelopes in Etosha face another threat. This is the realm of the lion. These lions are content. Food is plenty in Etosha. They just have to keep check on their territory. While young ones play, experienced adults are in pursuit of their next meal. The male lion is resting not far from his family. Since it is not hunting, the lion does not feel the need to hide. It is the start of a new day in Africa. Day in and day out, creatures have to struggle to feed, find shelter, and reproduce. The cycle of nature is plain and simple. Herbivores will travel for miles in search of fresh grass to eat and water holes to quench their thirst, or strive to protect their young. One of Africa's oldest, most cunning and efficient hunters inhabits Irindi's wetlands. A species that has withstood changes of time for millions of years. The Nile crocodile. Every creature near the water has to be on guard at all times. The crocodile is an ambush hunter. Crocodiles are no threat to adult hippos. The crocodile is wise enough not to make a move on a beast that is much larger and more powerful than itself. However, calves have to remain by their mothers at all times. One mistake could cost an infant's life. Irindi is home to a hunter that is, at least, as efficient as the crocodile. This is one of the last sanctuaries for this endangered species, the African wild dog. It is also called the painted dog, due to its striking patterns. Wild dogs hunt in packs, and collectively take care of their young and old members unable to hunt. They are very social animals. The dogs have smelt their prey and are now locked on their target. They will pursue their prey until the job is done. Wild dogs are resilient and fast. Should the need arise, they will keep in pursuit until the morning. They have taken down an impala. The creature is still alive when they stick their teeth into it, but it is a quick death. Even the blink of an eye means being left without food. Every dog is alone in the struggle to get a bite to eat. They tear out large chunks from the impala. Wild dogs are the undisputed fast-eating predators of Africa. Brown hyenas have smelt the food. However, it is not easy to take on such a large pack. For now, the hyena must make do with scattered scraps. The jackal stays close to the hyena. It is also after smaller pieces fit for its size. Avoiding competition with the dogs, the hyena is trying to leave with as much meat as possible. In the safety of bushes, it can eat later in peace. The brown hyena is circling the dogs, trying to find a suitable moment. The dogs have devoured most of the impala. They are full and have lost interest in the hyena. Whereas the jackal is still after larger chunks. It might be costly for the jackal to bite off more than it can chew. It is coming to the end of another day at Arendi. Namibia's Atlantic coast. The Benguela cold current feeds these shores with highly nutritious plankton carried north from Antarctica. This makes the Namib coast home to an abundance of species, despite its seemingly inhospitable appearance. Those who have adapted and remained strong have survived. The Cape fur seal, one of the most populous residents of the wild Namib coast, is the hyena's primary source of food. A tremendous crowd. Feeding on the nutrient-rich waters brought in by the Benguela current. The Cape fur seal gathers on these beaches and rocks throughout the year. there are around 300,000 seals on Skeleton Coast alone. The anatomy of the Cape fur seal is actually quite unfit for terrestrial life. However, the dangers that lie in the ocean force the seals to take refuge on this coast. Seals have evolved to move in water, so they are rather incapable on land. Seals are extremely noisy creatures. Among the masses, mothers and pups recognize each other from smell and sound. Finding mother is critical for the pup. Mother's milk will be the only source of food until it learns to hunt. Seals seem satisfied at feeding time in the water. There is no sign of the clumsiness they display on land. While young pups wait on the shore for their mother's return, seals old enough to swim will accompany their mothers. Inexperienced seals do not go far from the shore. There could be sharks in these cold waters. The seal colony is not alone. The Atlantic coast of Namibia is also home to many bird species. Terns and cormorants are permanent residents of the coast. The cormorants know the potential dangers hidden in the wavy ocean waters. They wait for seals to drive the schools of fish closer to the shore. The Cape gull is both a predator and opportunist. It wanders around the seals. The gull is no threat to an adult seal, but could be dangerous for the pups. It is looking for a vulnerable pup whose mother is out at sea. However, finding food on these wild coasts is not a problem. This little pup has lost its mother in the water and cannot get back to the colony. It is hungry and exhausted, giving it little chance of survival without its mother and the rest of the colony. Cape gulls know this, and they wait patiently for the right moment. The unforgiving geography of Namibia is full of choices for opportunists. The seal colony is calm until the males arrive on the shore to establish harems. Territorial fights will begin once they reach the shore. Soon, new pups will be born. As newborn season approaches, one of the most unexpected figures of the Atlantic coast turns up in the area. Jackal, the opportunist hunter of African plains and forests. The coast is full of carcasses. The jackals will have to make do with them until the vulnerable pups start to appear on the beach. For now, the seals do not seem disturbed by the jackals. Nonetheless, it is wise to maintain caution. The jackal can be dangerous, especially for the pups. Although these windy and wavy coasts do not offer shelter to the jackal, the annual chance to eat plentifully is too great to miss. Jackals give birth to their pups at a time when food is abundant. Water sources are just as important for birds. This is the only habitat for aquatic birds in Etosha. After feeding on the savanna, helmeted guinea fowls have come close to the water. They cannot survive without drinking water regularly. The Kori bustard is one of the heaviest birds that can fly. It must be alert while drinking water, as it cannot escape quickly. Flying a heavy body requires a lot of energy, so it prefers to waddle around instead. Namakwa doves are also thirsty after a long journey. They can fly more than 100 kilometers each day to find water. But this is a dangerous journey. This is the moment the jackals have been waiting for. Where there is plenty of prey, there are plenty of predators. All creatures are happy by the water, but they are exhausted and restless. They do not want the jackals close. It is not wise to anger the zebras and springboks, but this area is too valuable to surrender and leave. Birds have a great advantage over jackals: flight. Jackals will try again. Most doves will survive, but the jackals will catch enough to fill their stomachs. Tomorrow is a new day. The birds will come again, and the jackals will be waiting. Deserts cover 1/3 of land on our planet. These landscapes reveal some of the most dramatic sceneries in the world. Extraordinary methods are needed to survive the conditions here. There is no place for the weak. The Namib Desert, the southwestern expanse of Africa. This is the oldest desert on the planet. 55 million years old, to be precise. Each day is slightly hotter, expanding the desert that much more. Time will show whether life will be able to adapt to changing conditions. The desert is moving all the time. Sand is mobile. Add the strong winds, and you get a geography that transforms perpetually. The base of a sand dune might have not moved for thousands of years. But the peaks are dynamic. They shift as sand is blown around with the winds. Sossusvlei is one of Namibia's most iconic vistas. With peaks reaching 350 meters, these gigantic red sand dunes are some of the largest of its kind on the planet. There are clay pans trapped between colossal sand dunes. Dadetvallei. This former wetland is now dotted with dead camel thorn trees. The dark trunks of dead trees that ascend from the white clay ground reveal an eerie but dazzling scenery. Life seems to have frozen in time in Dadetvallei. These trees died some 900 years ago. Without access to water, trees have no chance of survival. However, dead trees are still erect. Scorching African temperatures and low humidity seared the trees before decomposing. The Namib Desert might be a challenging geography for many, but reptiles have prevailed. There are several snake species here. The snake has to search for food, but it has to avoid traveling over scalding sand at any length of time. It needs a hole to hide, shade to take shelter. Another expert of camouflage, the horned viper is the same color as the desert surface. It will wait patiently until an unsuspecting prey comes close. Most snakes have their eyes on the sides of their heads. However, the sidewinder has its eyes on the top of its head. There must be a reason. The sidewinder gets its name from the way it moves over sand. Moving sideways is not only fast, it is also a safe way of traveling over loose ground. This way, only a small part of the snake's body is in contact with the scalding sand. Having found suitable hunting ground, the sidewinder slowly buries itself in the sand. Nothing but its head and tail remains on the surface. With its eyes on top of its head, it can see prey even if buried in the sand. The trick-track chat is rather timid. The sidewinder might be very venomous, but it is not a serious threat for a wary bird. However, the bird cannot afford to take its eyes off the snake. it has a nest with chicks nearby. If the snake discovers the nest, the precious chicks might be its next meal. The bird must carry food to the chicks without disclosing the nest. Lack of water and extreme temperatures might make life difficult in the desert. But the biggest problem for creatures is lack of food. Adaptation is a must in the Namib Desert, where food is few and far between. Something baboons are very good at. Parts of the plants exposed to the sun might have withered, but they know that the roots are moist. Baboons have another trick up their sleeve. They know there is highly nutritious, semi-digested plant remains among elephant droppings. This precious snack is rich in energy and liquid. The blacksmith lapwing also has an interest in elephant droppings, but it is not a herbivore. Insects craving to taste these undigested plants will be food for the lapwing. Most of Namibia might be desert, but there are rivers that run throughout the year, even if flow rates vary. Acting as the national boundary with Angola, Kunene River is one of them. And the last stop on the river is Epupa Falls. The water travels over dozens of terraces that stretch out for almost 1.5 kilometers. The name Epupa is the Herero word for cloud of water. The river, which cascades for only a short period each year, gradually drains through rocks and disappears. Beginning in central Angola and draining into the Okavango Delta, Kavango River feeds a much wider area. Before reaching Botswana, Kavango runs for the entire length of Namibia and creates seasonal floodplains in the country's Caprivi region. Mahongo is one of the region's most important game reserves. The 25,000-hectare park contains diverse habitats. The river and reed-covered wetlands nearby are one of Mahongo's most spectacular. Buffalo and hippos are the regulars of these wetlands. Contrary to most antelope species, the red lechwe likes wetlands and is often seen alongside buffalo and aquatic birds. Meadows and forests stretch along the borders of the wetlands. Although tall acacias dominate the geography, the giant baobab that seem to be scattered over Mahongo are admittedly the most eye-catching of trees. As the sun ascends, many animals seek shade in the forest. But this is feeding time for the cold-blooded Nile monitor. wetlands are surrounded by savannas, covered by dwarf scrubs and teak trees. Food is plentiful in the savanna, so it attracts many animals. One of the most unique creatures of the savanna must be the elegant roan antelope. They are an endangered species, and Mahango is one of their last sanctuaries. The pale-colored animal, with a hefty body and spectacular horns, is safe in this reserve. All of the animals in the savanna must have regular access to water. For many creatures, the river and wetlands of Mahango are quite deep and full of dangers. However, there are year-round water holes on some of the plains that stretch out between the vegetation. Experienced females bring the herd to these sources of water, and in doing so, convey this vital knowledge to future generations. The nature of Mahango might be mesmerizing. However, the nearby Rupara National Park is home to exceptionally high populations of different animals. Vegetation is dense in Rupara, making it attractive for antelope species and giraffes. This national park holds an important secret: elephants. Rupara is an oasis for elephants in this dry terrain. During the wet season, animals migrate here from as far as Angola, Namibia, and Botswana. The riverbanks are meeting points for herds. This mega herd will continue enjoying Rupara until the waters recede and grass dries. This immense stretch of land might seem inhabited, yet it could be home to one of the most magnificent wonder of nature in the Namib Desert. The only way to witness this phenomenon, known as the fairy circles, is to have a bird's-eye view of the region. There are several hypotheses concerning fairy circles, but scientists are still far from finding a satisfying answer for this unusual formation. Some argue that it is plants competing for water, while others implicate prevailing winds and underground termite nests. Whatever the cause, fairy circles deserve to be called mysterious. Fairy circles are not the only wonders of this geography. Water might be scarce here, but what there is has been enough to permanently shape the landscape. It is a desert, but there is vegetation nonetheless. The riverbeds here have been dry for thousands of years. A minimal amount of water brought in from the rains falling up north is enough to sustain life in this landscape. All the water here is underground. However, nature has a surprise for these lands with near to none rainfall. Nearly every morning, fog clouds rush in from the ocean into the desert, making it the major source of water in the region. rocks might not appear to be the best place to take root, but these plants depend on water drops trapped between rocks after fog condensates. There are creatures here which seem to have seamlessly adapted to the grains of sand blown about by unceasing winds and the challenge of finding water. Even elephants, the largest land mammal in the world, are dwarfed by this geography. Elephants are enduring animals, but the desert can take its toll on them too. Competition for limited food has forced them to keep smaller herds compared to their relatives roaming the savanna. Puros Hills. In the dry riverbed beyond these hills are trees with nutritious leaves. The reward is great, but the trip is quite challenging. To get there, giraffes have to walk for miles over these hills under the scorching sun. Predators are rare in Puros. The giraffe's greatest natural enemy here is nature itself. It is the early hours of the day in the Namib, and the layer of fog carried in from the ocean has enshrouded the desert. The fog will disperse with sunrise. One of the longest living plants in the world, the Welwitschia, relies on the morning fog to survive. Despite its large and expansive appearance, it actually only has 2 leaves. Many of the Welwitschias in the desert are more than 1,000 years old. Looking at the strange plants, trees that died 6 centuries ago in massive sand dunes, the Namib might seem deserted. While most of the chameleons on the planet live in dense vegetation, rarely setting foot on ground, the Namaqua chameleon has adapted to desert conditions. In the middle of an ocean of sand, this island is the chameleon's habitat. Seeking bugs and larvae, the chameleon rarely wanders far from it. From the outside, bugs may be crunchy, but their juicy insides provide the chameleon with all the liquid it needs. The springbok and oryx are the only ungulates in the Namib Desert. They might be in their thousands in the savanna, but here they are only found in small groups. The most common and largest mammal here is the oryx, which has adapted perfectly to drought and heat. To prevent dehydration when temperatures peak, the oryx stops perspiring, raising body temperature to 45 degrees Celsius. Having evolved a unique circulation system, it can prevent damage to its brain and other vital organs. Surface temperatures may reach 70 degrees Celsius at midday. This is too hot for the survival of many species. there is almost no shade. Away from direct sunlight, sand is cooler below the surface. Some creatures will stay there until the sun descends towards the horizon. These giraffes are near the end of their journey. Having filled their stomachs, the giraffes are close to their target. A rare and precious waterhole. They can now quench their thirst. Surface water is limited in the desert, so waterholes have a short lifespan. In the most arid place on Earth, water sources dry quicker than they can form. Having traveled from hundreds of miles away, this waterhole is a real blessing. After a long and tiring journey, the elephants arrive at the waterhole. The smell of water has got them impatient. It is uncertain how long before the water here will dry out, and when the elephants will be able to freely quench their thirst. After all that time crossing the desert, they will enjoy the moment and drink plenty. Every corner of Etosha is full of surprises. Animals must remain alert at all times. Those that have quenched their thirst must return to the herd and travel to open plains for safety. Otherwise, this could be the last waterhole it sees. Giraffes have come a long way. They have to share the waterhole. However, this is an opportunity for males to establish dominance and impress the females. In the race to prove themselves, thirst is no longer a priority. Giraffes stand side by side for a while, weighing each other out. The tension between the two will soon turn into a fight. Giraffe's main weapon is its swerving long neck and large head. Defense is equally as important as the assault. The males are blinded by the brawl. The females have long gone. The zebras have come instead. Maybe it is time to drink water in peace. Springbok is one of the most resilient inhabitants of southern Africa. It can live without water for days on end, With its light brown coat, white rump and belly, and the dark stripes extending the length of its body, the springbok is almost invisible out in the open. In regions with plenty of food, it is possible to see herds in their thousands. Springboks prefer open ranges and grasslands. Etosha's treeless, infinite grasslands is their ideal feeding ground. Without a place to hide, it is almost impossible for a predator to approach the springboks unnoticed. In the absence of predators, the greatest struggle on Etosha's plains is within the herd. Both male and female springboks have horns. Female horns are shorter. The heart-shaped horns of the male are its greatest weapon in the battle for territory. Dominant males want to take control of territories close to waterholes. Females will come here for a drink of water. Males with control over water have control over the females. The male is patrolling its territory. It will not accept intruders here. However, the dominance of the male is constantly under threat. A fight is often inevitable. It is time to use its strong neck muscles and horns. The loser will leave the territory. However, there are other males claiming presence in the area. The struggle for territory and display of power is rather short-lived. Dominance over Etosha's waterholes changes hands a few times a day. Even the strongest springbok can only win a few battles and keep control over the area briefly. Sunset at Etosha. Hiding from the sizzling African sun, animals that have taken shelter in the bushes and the shade throughout the day are slowly emerging. Nocturnal animals now take their turn of using the water. The black rhinoceros. It is almost impossible to see this prehistoric creature in the daylight. It only appears after the night falls and the air gets cooler. It might have poor eyesight, but its sense of smell and sound are highly developed. After a hot day, it is impatient to have a drink of water, although it is still dusk. It must be sure there are no threats around the waterhole. The elephant is no threat. Other herbivores will not disturb the rhino either. It is time to quench its thirst. Night has fallen. A waterhole in the middle of some bushes conceals one of Etosha's greatest secrets. This is where black rhinos meet. Black rhinos are not social animals. However, this get-together at the waterhole during the dry season is an exception. It can smell other rhinos nearby, which make it very nervous. It is a calm night for the time being. 'T the rhinos will drink water and return to the plains. The struggle in the open is unforgiving. The tolerance they showed each other by the water is short-lived. A new day begins in Etosha. The hyena has made the most of the night and ate aplenty. But now it has to quench its thirst. However, in Etosha, predators can easily fall prey. This hyena is an unwanted guest around here. Among the bushes, the lions have a prized trophy. A black rhino, the loser of last night's battle between the beasts. Jackals have caught the scent of the dead animal. The jackal is a smart and patient predator. With so much food around, it knows it will at least get some leftovers. A wholesome meal for the lions. Not only do they evade hunting, they will have enough to feed off this huge animal for several days. Scorching heat, a challenging geography, and extreme conditions. Drought and occasionally floods draw the fine line between life and death in Namibia. Nature has to hold its breath until the water brought in with the rains exhilarate life, even if only briefly. The miraculous cycle of life has adapted to change until now. Those who failed to adapt have perished. However, the planet is changing. Temperatures are rising. While deserts are becoming larger, hotter, and more unforgiving. Different habitats are becoming more prone to desertification. Only time will show what the future holds and how life will adapt to survive. Until the next wet season, life will continue at the limits and creatures will struggle to survive. Namibia's fascinating nature will keep on enduring these challenges, as it has done since the beginning of time.